There are these reports around this morning, as well as these almost threats from Donald Trump, like the idea that he's going to take the territory the easy way or the hard way, and as you say, the detailed invasion.
You don't want to sound like a mafia boss, do you, Don?
No, well, quite. And there are also reports around that Downing Street are in talks of sending, with European allies, of sending a military force to Greenland that would guard the Arctic for Donald Trump. Now, Downing Street sources basically say that, look, we share Donald Trump's view, and that's that Russia's growing aggression in the High North, which is what they call the Arctic Circle, must be deterred and Euro-Atlantic security strengthened. But basically, there is this idea that now British officials are meeting with counterparts, including in Germany and in France, to start preparations that could involve British soldiers. But how that's going to help the Kingdom of Denmark and indeed Greenland and stop them feeling unsafe against these, and I think it's fair to call them threats from Donald Trump. It's not exactly clear at this point. But I think this is something Downing Street are concerned about, because we've seen actually one of the strongest almost rebukes from Keir Starmer this week in that language that he used, basically saying it's a decision for them, much stronger than he's gone on, for example, Venezuela, much stronger indeed than they're going on Iran too. And we can see them very clearly. We can see how he's responding to every country, and that means it's much clearer to see that he is going much stronger in response to Greenland.
Is there a sense, I don't know what you think about this, but my sense is that certainly over the last, certainly during 2026 so far, which has had plenty of events involved, my sense is that, towards the end of last year as well, obviously throughout much of the first year of the Trump administration, Starmer tried to cling to Trump pretty closely and not allow any kind of even much rhetorical space between them. There were moments of deviation, for example, of course, famously after the Zelensky-Trump showdown, and Starmer didn't say anything, but he made it very clear whose side he was on in that when he embraced Zelensky on the steps of Downing Street. But it feels to me that that line is becoming harder and harder as Trump is becoming more emboldened around the world. He's becoming more bellicose. His agenda is becoming clearer. For domestic politics, if nothing else, it's getting harder for Starmer to cleave to Trump so tightly.
I think that's exactly right. And I think we can remember those moments where there have been almost sort of schisms of disagreement. And they've been so small, like him saying about Sadiq Khan, that he's a friend. Yeah, that he's a friend. And those moments stick in your mind because they're so rare. But I think this year we are seeing a slightly different approach, like on Greenland. And I think there is a feeling from inside Downing Street that Keir Starmer believes that basically loads of people in his party want him to just call up Donald Trump and shout at him, for example, over Venezuela and talk about whether or not he's broken international law. They feel that would not be helpful. For example, on things like Ukraine, for example, on things like the trade deal, they feel it is still very helpful to have those relationships. But I think it is going to become increasingly difficult. I think it's going to become increasing. There's going to be increasing amounts of pressure from his own party. It was interesting just listening to Peter Mandelson, who was of course, the sacked ambassador to the US, and he was basically saying what the UK needs to do is build up strength and build up military reserves to actually show that they're relevant.
What would your message be to the Trump administration about Greenland this morning?
So the Prime Minister has been pretty unequivocal about this in the last week, that Greenland is a part of the Kingdom of Denmark. Denmark is a European partner to us and a long-standing ally in NATO, and the future of Greenland is for Greenlanders and Danes to determine and to decide.
Would it be the end of NATO, as the Danish Prime Minister has said, if the US were to invade Greenland?
So, look, I think we've all got accustomed, haven't we, to Donald Trump, communicating about geopolitics in a certain way. This week, we have also seen the White House say that his instinct is always diplomacy first. We know that Marco Rubio is going to Copenhagen this week. Where we do agree with President Trump is about the increasing activity of Putin and Russia in the Arctic Circle. That is a part of the world that is becoming more contested from a geopolitical point of view. We saw on Wednesday of this week, didn't we, the interception of the vessel in international waters off the coast of Iceland, where the UK assisted the US to intercept one of the vessels, which is part of the Shadow Fleet, which has been used to transport illegitimate oil around the globe. And we know that the proceeds from the sale of that illegitimate oil is fueling terrorism, conflict, misery from the Middle East to
But it would be the end of
Ukraine.
NATO, wouldn't it, Secretary of State? I mean, it would. I mean, just by definition, one NATO country invading another NATO country, it would be the end of NATO.
Look, I think that we can get carried away having hypothetical situations.
It's not really
here, Lewis.
hypothetical, Secretary of State, because the President himself has said, he said this week, we will be getting it. We'll be getting it the hard way or the easy way. It's not hypothetical. The President said it. It's not briefings from his administration. It's from the President's mouth. So do you not believe the President when he says that?
So, as I said, I think we have got used to a certain style of communication.
You don't believe him?
I think that we agree about the strategic importance of the Arctic Circle and providing effective deterrence to Russia and Putin. It's why back in December we signed a defence agreement with Norway to jointly operate 20 warfare frigates.
Are you not taking what
Norway.
the President says seriously about Greenland?
We take what the leaders of our allies in NATO take seriously all the time, and we're standing shoulder to shoulder.
But if you
with
take
Denmark.
it seriously, then it's not hypothetical, is it? You
No,
must have
but
a
look,
response.
there's a way in which President Trump has communicated about geopolitical issues.
So you're saying it's hyperbole?
Lewis, you're putting words into my mouth.
I'm
What
not.
I'm saying
just trying to understand what
is,
you're
I
saying.
think that we achieve more when we work together as NATO allies, and that's all NATO allies. If you look at what's happened just in the last week, actually, with regard to Ukraine, we signed the declaration of intent with France, saying that if there is a ceasefire in Ukraine and Russia stops the invasion, that we are prepared to send military troops. But actually, with America, you heard Steve Witkoff this week also making more positive comments than had been made before about US security guarantees. And so, look, and I talked about the action that we took with the US in the North Atlantic with regard to that vessel. And so, I think we need calm heads around all of this. We need to keep talking to our allies, our European allies in...
It would be wrong, though, wouldn't it? An invasion, it would be wrong and illegal.
So, look, an invasion of Greenland, an invasion of any sovereign country, that would be in contravention of international law.
It'd be wrong and illegal.
A military invasion would be wrong.
The French and German governments are reportedly considering sending troops to Greenland as a show of deterrence to support our ally Denmark. Is that something we'd consider?
So I've seen the reporting, Lewis, this morning in the Telegraph, and I think that there are some journalists and commentators who are reading too much into business as usual discussions that are taking place between NATO allies at the moment. I started talking to you earlier in this interview about some of the action that we're taking as a result of the defence agreement that we signed with Norway in December. Yeah. We also obviously lead the Joint Expeditionary Force, which is a collection of 10 like-minded nations who all agree that defence and deterrence of Russia in the Arctic Circle is of primary importance. And so that's our primary focus here, is about, making sure that we're always acting to protect our national interest and make sure that we can continue to enjoy peace on the continent of Europe.
This obviously would be a hammer blow to the NATO alliance. Do you think it is something that we should be taking seriously?
Yes, I do. I mean, I forget who said it first. An American friend said it to me after Trump was elected for the second time. He said, always take the American president seriously, but you don't always have to take him literally. And there is, the way that Donald Trump behaves, there is something in that. I very, very much hope that America is not planning to invade Greenland, because I think that the consequence of that would be the collapse of NATO. I think that would lead to an end to American funding for Ukraine, which would lead to Putin's victory in Ukraine. And what you then have is no NATO and a Russian army that has a war economy behind it and is ready for battle. And that is really dangerous. That is a new world order. And we have to do whatever we can to prevent that from happening. I agree with what Donald Trump said yesterday, which is that Greenland has to be protected from Russia and Chinese influence. And that's why it's incredibly important that NATO leaders meet. And it's what Kemi called on Keir Starmer to do at Prime Minister's Questions on Wednesday. Say, call an emergency meeting of NATO so that we can discuss the security of
Under
Greenland.
Article 4.
And so that we just say, right, if our primary concern is keeping Greenland safe, how can we all play our part in doing that without anyone needing to?
But Alex Burghart, but the US is the main component of NATO.
That's right.
So therefore, what good if the US is determined to do it? What good would a NATO meeting do?
So what I'm talking about is that Donald Trump said that his motivations were to try and protect Greenland and so the North Atlantic from Chinese and Russian influence. I think that's something that we can all play a part in. I'm not proposing that we end up with British troops facing off against American troops at all.
But do you think if it were to happen, would that be the end? As the Danish Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen said, would that be the end of NATO?
I think it's be very, very difficult to see how you could keep the alliance together under those circumstances. We have to do whatever we can to prevent that from happening. The consequences of that happening are extremely dangerous to everyone in Europe.
But the problem is, isn't it? I mean, you're absolutely right to say that if this were just about security concerns, that those could be bargained with and assuaged. But what if they're not about security concerns? We saw Steve Witkoff, the Deputy White House Chief of Staff, go on CNN this week, and he was very, very clear. He simply rejects the idea that the Danes have any right to be there. He says that it's a Danish colony and they have no right to be there. And that, as we're seeing, this White House basically believes might is right. They're the most powerful country in the world. They're the hegemon. They're certainly the North America hegemon. And therefore, they should take Greenland. You can't negotiate with that. That's just a worldview that's totally at variance with our own.
So as I say, we must take the Americans seriously. We don't always take them literally.
Is that just a comfort blanket thinking? That used to be true of Trump.
I hope it's not, right? But the only way that we are most likely to resolve this is by getting NATO together to talk about it before it's too late. And that's what the Prime Minister should be doing. The Prime Minister should be. We are probably sort of the second most important member of NATO. We should be leading the calls to get all of these people in the room to thrash this out.
Mark Rutte, the Secretary General of NATO, has said nothing about this, which probably tells you something, doesn't it, Alex Burghart, about how NATO wants to deal with this, which is they don't want to be the ones to deal with it. They probably don't want that.
I think that if it's incumbent upon the membership of NATO to try and preserve the organisation, and I think dialogue is the best way to do that. I can't believe that there's a better way of doing it. And what we have to do is make sure that the organisation that has kept us safe, kept Europe safe since the Second World War, survives. And we also want to make sure that nothing happens to Greenland without the agreement of the people who live in Greenland.